Hey friends, you are crafting with Kim Byers, and today we are talking all about sublimation. We're going to talk about how do you sublimate without having a sublimation printer, without making that big investment. So if you subscribe to my channel, you might have seen my video last week where I'm talking about this subject, but we did it a different way. So we sublimated using sublimation ink pens. So we drew designs, we used our Cricut to draw designs, and then we sublimated that onto a pillow. Well, today we're going to be talking about sublimation without a printer, but a different way. So we're going to be using sublimation sheets. So ink sheets, so that can be in patterns, that can be full color, that could be ombre, that could be a ton of different things. There's a lot of different product out there, but I'm going to show you how to sublimate on a tumbler. That's what we're going to use today, a tumbler, but this could be a t-shirt, a pillow, a flag, a license plate. I mean, there are tons of different sublimation blanks, and I'm going to put links to a lot of the ones that I really love down below in the description so you guys can get your hands on those. But basically, we're just going to talk about how to sublimate, how to do this really cool craft without having to make that massive investment. By the way, guys, if you like what we're talking about today, I would love for you to hit that subscribe button and join me for all my future videos. All right, let's go. Okay, so here we are on the craft table. Now this looks like a lot of stuff, but guys, you don't need all of these things. I just wanted to show you some options. So the very first thing that you need are the sublimation sheets. So this is the Cricut brand, and they call it infusible ink. And so with the infusible ink, these are just sheets of sublimation ink. And so we're going to use these, we're going to place them on a mat and cut them out with my Cricut. You don't have to have a Cricut. You could use a straight edge. You could use a punch. You can create things with these sublimation sheets without ever having to use a printer or using a die cutting machine. So, but today we're going to use the Cricut 3, and then I have some heat tape so we can secure down our design. I have some alcohol that I'm going to use to clean my substrate, which by the way, today is the tumbler. So we're going to use a tumbler. I have some parchment paper to protect my tumbler and my heat source. So the only thing you don't see here is the heat source, and that really is because it depends on what you're making. So these sublimation sheets can work with a tumbler press, they can work with a mug press, they can work with an easy press 2 or 3, they can work with a traditional heat press. So it just depends on what you're making, whether you're making t-shirts or totes or tumblers or mugs or hats, or you can sublimate so many different things. Okay, let's pop over to Cricut Design Space and let me show you what we're making. Okay, so here we are in Cricut Design Space, and I've gone ahead and pulled in the things that I want to work with today. So if you guys know me, you know I love stripes, you know I love polka dots, I love traditional patterns and things, and so that's what we're doing today. So I'm going to show you how you could do this with your, straight cutter, or you could do this with your Cricut, but I wanted to show you too how to jazz it up a little bit. So if you go over into images, you're going to be able to search stripes, and that's where I found this one right here, and that's where I found this one as well. And this little block is actually my template. So let's start from square one. So when I am making anything, I get a template, or I make a template. So I'm going to go over into shapes. I'm going to pick something that is roughly the shape of my shirt, my tumbler, my license plate, whatever it is that I'm making. And so I just grabbed a square. And so this is the size of my tumbler, 9.5 by 8. So it's, if I took a fabric ruler and measured all the way around that tumbler, 9.5 inches is what I would get. So what I want that for is I want to be able to put my design on that and know what my design is going to look like when I get done. So if I bring my template down onto any of these that I created, you see this is what it's going to look like. Oh, and let me show you this. So if I take this, let's arrange and send to back, and then I can just bump that down. So you see here on this one, I'm going to have design all the way to that top lip. And then I would have design all the way to the edges. Well, guess what? What if I don't want design all the way to that top lip? And I really don't, right? Because I don't want it to have to bleed over. So I'd love to have just white at the top, a little bit of white at the bottom, and all of my stripes in the middle. And that's why a template is so, so important. Okay, and I was a little inspired by this Kate Spade tumbler. And by the way, I love this tumbler. I'm going to link it up down below along with all the stuff we're creating today in case you guys want to check that out. It's just, I love it so, so much. But we're going to make this one inspired by that. So I'm not going to have as many colors, but I have a black and orange and the green. And then you could knock out a bat, or you could knock out your initials. Let's see if I can get that a little bit larger so you guys can see that. So you can knock out your initials. Then you could also, instead of having, you know, stripe, 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 and then a line of bats, super cute, right? You can do all the things, and these can be done with a straight edge or with a punch, or you could come over and do this in Cricut. So I just wanted to show you guys that there's options for you guys to be able to use these sublimation sheets. Okay, so now let's go ahead and turn off all the things that we're not going to work with today, and we will send one design over to the Cricut, get that cut out, and let me show you how you use these sheets. Now everything has been turned off and we are left with just the things that we want to cut. Okay, the next thing you need to do is go up and make sure that you have the correct machine chosen. And remember, with sublimation sheets, you can cut them out with any of your Cricut machines. Okay, so let's go ahead and hit make it. So if we look over into the left-hand navigation, you see that we have 3 mats, which is absolutely perfect. We have the green, we have the orange, and we have the black. One thing that I want to remind you guys, okay, so if you are using heat on any of these craft projects, you need to mirror image that design. Okay, let me say that again. If you're using heat, you want to mirror image. If you are not, then you don't have to mirror image. So that means vinyl, no mirror image, there's no heat there. But if you are using sublimation sheets, if you are using HTV, you want to use the mirror function and flip your design around. So now what we want to do is we want to mirror image each one of these mats. And I know what you're thinking. You're like, Kim, that's just a stripe. It is a good habit to get into, to just do it, and then you don't risk messing anything up. Now that we've done that, I want to look at my mats, and now I am ready to move on and send this to my machine. Our next thing to do is we're going to select our base material. And so these are my favorites. So if for those of you who are kind of new to Cricut, if you have items here, these are things that you have selected to be in your favorites. If you don't see what you want here, then that means they're in the browse all materials, and there are hundreds of things to pick from. But if you look right here, you see this actually says iron on. That's the category they put it under. Infusible ink transfer sheets, also called sublimation sheets. So we want to click on that. And then it's going to come up and it's going to tell us what blade we're using. And this is just the general fine point blade, which is why you can use your Cricut Joy to cut this out. So now we know that we don't have to put anything in clamp A. We have the fine point blade in clamp B. And we are ready to hop back over to the craft table and put these on the mat. Okay, so first things first, we just want a little bit of alcohol. And we want to put that on like a microfiber cloth or something that's not going to have any lint. And then we're going to clean it really, really good. We want all the fingerprints off. We want all of lint, dust, dirt, anything that the ink could attach to instead of our actual substrate. So now that that's done, we're going to let that dry while we put our sublimation sheet onto our mat. So we're going to be using a regular green mat. Let me put the carrier sheet away. And then I'm going to use black, orange, and green. So after we left Cricut Design Space, I realized that I don't have enough of the big sheets of infusible ink. So we are going to be using 2 of the smaller sheets. So I wanted to crack this open though and show you what this looks like. So when you take out sublimation sheets, they come out in these little black bags. Now the reason they're in these black bags is because sunlight can actually affect the sublimation ink, and we don't want anything diminishing that ink. The other thing is when you look at this, you're like, oh my goodness, Kim, that is not black. That is gray. That is not good. That's because sublimation ink is activated by heat. So you see the color on this box? This will be the color of the box when it's heated. And so the same thing for this tangerine orange and this avocado green. So we're going to get those really bright, vibrant colors, but we won't see that until we have the ink. So now what we want to do is I'm going to show you the back of this too. So if you can see that, it's kind of like a filmy, glossy, filmy look. So we want to place our infusible ink onto our mat same as we would anything else, vinyl, iron on, and then we're going to put it into the Cricut and cut it out. So I did look at my design and I made sure that by using 2 sheets that I'm going to be okay. So this is 12 inches by 4.5, and I'm actually going to use a brayer on this because I don't want any ripples or bubbles. And so a brayer is what you're going to use when you're putting fabric onto the mat, but I'll be honest with you guys, I use my brayer anymore for everything. I use it for vinyl, I use it for iron-on. It is the best way to get all those bubbles out. And with infusible ink, candidly guys, you don't want to use a scraper, because if you scratch or scrape any of this ink, then that's going to show up onto your design, and you don't want that to happen, right? So I'm going to use a brayer and get out all the bubbles, and I'm going to take the second sheet and I'm going to put it right below the other sheet. So infusible ink is going to cut like everything else. We just want to place our mat under the guides. The next important thing is we're going to remove it from the green mat, but remember, when you take things off of your mat, everyone, remember this, you want to keep from harming the material, so you are going to bend the mat and not the material. Go ahead and I'm going to show you how to weed infusible ink or sublimation sheets. It's different, so we're not going to be using a tool necessarily. This is more like a cracking and popping sort of thing. So if we look at our different ones, I wanted to get one that would be easy to see. Okay, this one's great. If you guys can see that on camera, this is the one with my initials and with the bats. So we're just gonna start popping and cracking these. And we want to pull away the negative, so the part that is not our design. And infusible ink, sublimation sheets, it comes off really, really easy, so you can do all of this by hand. Now if you do get some of this white on like this, you want to make sure and go back and get that off. I personally just don't like it being on there, and it could have remnants of ink on it, so you just want to make sure and get as much of that off as absolutely possible. Oh, and the other thing I should tell you guys is I changed my mind, which I do sometimes when I'm crafting. I changed my mind and I decided not to do the avocado green. I'm going to use that for another project that I have coming up, and I really wanted this to just stay orange and black after I got looking at it. So that one we're not going to cut out and use today, but I promise it's going to pop up on a project really, really soon. And the Cricut did an amazing job with those tiny little letters. Now, the big thing is here, guys, so for the B, I want to make sure that I leave the interior of the B. So go slow when you do that. And then try not to put your finger back on top of it so that it, wants to pull away with the sticky. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is crack off one of the orange. So on our design, we're starting with orange on the bottom, and it is 8 inches from top to bottom. And then I want to put 1/4 inch on the top and on the bottom. I want a little strip of white on both sides. So I'm just going to peel this out, and then I'm going to take my tape measure, and by the way, I got that under a heat press. Don't do that. Don't do like me. But I want to be able to have a very small piece, and I'm actually just going to measure it from the 1. Okay, so this is sticky. So if you can hear that, it's tacky. So what I want to do is I want to place it down, and I cut it with a straight edge so it would be perfectly straight. And then I'm just going to measure it and make sure. And so once I get this one in place, you do not want any overlap. That's the only thing about it. So what I want to do is I want to take a pair of scissors and I want to trim that away. And I would rather have a very small line, which means that I can't have this sheet. Do you see that? You have to make sure that your design is not going over piece of the carrier sheet. Okay, so all of my sublimation stripes are in place. I have everything measured. I'm happy with the way that it's looking. And so I have used heat tape on all the seams, and I even put some here just to make sure that everything stays in place. The next step is that we want to take parchment paper. It actually, a lot of people say butcher paper, but I'll be honest with you guys, I have a hard time finding butcher paper in my store. And so I have been using parchment paper, and with great success, no problem whatsoever. So what I'm going to do is I am going to tape up this tumbler in parchment and just make sure that it is very well wrapped so that my ink does not get onto my tumbler press. And so I'm actually going to use multiple sheets of parchment. And once we get done with this, then we are going to break out the tumbler press and we are going to give this a whirl. Okay, so I have out my tumbler press and it's heating up. While it's heating up, a couple of things. If you are still with me at this point, please pop down in the comments and tell me what kind of heat source you're using. So do you have an easy press? Do you have a mug press? Do you have a tumbler press? Now I have done tumblers in the mug press, and we could do this one today in the mug press, but since I have a tumbler press, we're going to use this. So I'm going to put the video for the mug press with the tumbler up above and down below so you guys can see that if you have a mug press. I'm also going to put this video where I unboxed this tumbler press and did a first project. So I did these really cute little glass bamboo lid cups in this just a couple of weeks ago. Super cute. I love the way they turned out. So make sure that you hop over and check out those videos if you're in the market for a tumbler press, or if you want to know how to use your mug press to make a tumbler. A couple more things. So if you do not have some of these were just a couple of dollars on Amazon. This is on Amazon. I am going to link these up down below, because when you do these kinds of projects, guys, you want to have some way to protect your fingers. Trust me, I got a little too zealous on a project one time, and oh gosh, it was not good. And then for our tumbler, I didn't point this out before, but when you put your wrap on, just make sure that you can still see your seam. You want to just know where that is. So just make sure that you can see that, because whether you're in this tumbler press or you're in a mug press, you are going to, rotate it. Now you could be using a convection oven, which absolutely, so if you are, just make sure that you wrap this a little bit tighter and do the heat tape on the top and the bottom so that you can put that in your convection oven. But with us using the tumbler press today, I don't even need to tape down the ends. It'll be fine. Last but not least, guys, if you are doing sublimation, you need to be in a well-ventilated area. Make sure that you do not stand over this or hover over it while it's baking that ink in. It's just not good for you. And crack a window, turn on your ceiling fan. Okay, so we're almost up to temperature, and then we will go ahead and put our tumbler in the machine. Okay, so the tumbler press is to heat. We're at 360 for 60 seconds. I'm gonna take my design, find my seam, and I want to know where my seam is, because it's going to make it a little bit easier for me to be able to know where to, turn. Like, I just want to make sure that I'm getting the turn good. Okay, and making sure that I'm covering, all of the surfaces when I press this. Okay, so now this machine, I'm going to close the press. It's going to start automatically, so there's nothing that we need to click. Okay, and so it makes a nice loud beep. So now what we want to do is, oh gosh, open that up. And so then we are just going to turn, I'm gonna slightly turn, then we're going to close it up again. And we're gonna do that one more time. Okay, since I have heat resistant gloves, we can go ahead and check this out. I'm upset with myself that I didn't, wrap that a little bit better, but here we go. I can see the ink through my paper. So these are sublimation sheets, and this is still pretty warm here, guys. Okay, so I waited till it cooled. It was just too difficult to unwrap it with the heat gloves. So I am going to go ahead now and see how these sublimation sheets worked. And I'm hoping that they worked as well on these stripes as I know they can on fabric. And I've used sublimation sheets on mugs before, so I'll put that video up above, and used it with the mug press. So you guys can check that out as well. One thing that I'm a little mad at myself for not doing is making a couple of these a little bit tighter, because whenever you do sublimation, you really want it to be as tight as possible so that you eliminate bleed. And I'm wondering if I did a good enough job on that, but I guess we're about to see. Okay, moment of truth. Oh, wow. Oh gosh. The color is beautiful. I can see that, I think maybe there was a ripple right there in my stripe. But that's not really a problem of the product, right? That's more so my wrapping. And so there is a tiny seam right there. No biggie. Loving the first stripe. Let's see how the bats did. Okay. My bats are falling away. Oh, and look at that, guys. All of the ink. It took all of the ink. There's nothing. And sometimes when you do sublimation, you see that they're, see? And again, I feel like this is my fault, guys. So not, I feel like it's like not the product, but it's more so me. Oh, now that looks good. That looks really good. I like that a lot. I was torn as to whether or not to do, you know, my initials or to do the bats. But that part, I can say, guys, I love the way that turned out. You know what? I feel like this was my heat tape. This was my extra heat tape causing a little bit of angst right there. That's what I think, because it's kind of in this line right here. But what I will say though is I think the sublimation sheets did great. I feel like that is more of my problem with the wrapping. Because look how beautiful that looks. That looks phenomenal. There we go. Took a minute, guys. Oh, yep. See, it's like that whole... Okay. I'm absolutely 100% in love. So stinking cute. A little bit of an issue right there, but again, I feel like that was me and not the product. So the sublimation sheets are a win. I think they turned out beautiful. Isn't that great? Okay, so I hope you loved that. I hope you loved learning how to sublimate without making that huge investment of a sublimation printer. And it turned out beautifully. I am really, really happy about how our sublimation tumbler turned out. So if you haven't already, I would love for you guys to hit that subscribe button and join me for all my future videos. I also put down in the links below everything that we used today so you can find it easily. And if you have any questions, I really want to hear from you guys. So hop down in the comments, let me know what you have questions about. Let me see if I can help you to craft with confidence and to enjoy all your crafting. And I will see you guys next time.